Sono piaciuti. It's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. Good luck, my baby, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. I'd remove you. Chips, chips. Da-ti-do-di-do, chi-boom, chi-boom-boom. Da-ti-do-di-do, chi-boom, chi-boom-boom. Da-ti-do-di-do. Via, via, vieni via con me. Entra in questo amore buio, non perderti per niente al mondo. Via.
Hello and welcome to Easy and Elegant. I'm Monica Dalton and so happy to have you join us again. As you know, our show is specifically designed with you in mind to make your life more easy and more elegant. I'm so happy to be here today with Chef Silvio of Cafe Alegre in Madison, Connecticut. Chef Silvio is a renowned author, restaurateur, chef, and has a series of sauces that I think are absolutely out of this world. Chef Silvio also owns Woodwind's banquet facility in Branford, Connecticut for your weddings, parties, any event that you could possibly imagine. It's the perfect place to be. So we're so happy to have Chef Silvio here. Unfortunately, he can't stay long with us. He's got to cook our dinner for later on. But anyway, we're so happy to have him.
Somebody have to go cook, right?
That's right. Well, thank you so much.
You guys enjoy your tasting, and I'll see you later on.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We love it here. So tonight we're going to do, this afternoon, we're going to be doing champagne. I'm so happy to introduce you to Joe Dolce, who is a registered licensed sommelier, and he is fabulous, and he's going to explain to us the differences between champagne, cava, and prosecco. Hello, Joe. Welcome.
Hi, how are you? I'm going to trade places with you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Champagne and sparkling wine, the most celebrated wines of the world, and strangely enough, an accident. Sparkling wine did not really happen until the advent of the bottle. And the bottle itself didn't come around until about the 17th century. Though there was glass making and there were vessels, there was not really a bottle that could hold, especially a wine that had pressure, until around the 17th century and really into the 18th century.
Wow.
And today we're talking about champagne and sparkling wine. There is a very distinct difference between the two. Champagne is only from the Champagne region of France, where sparkling wines can come from any other region in the world, and each region has their own sparkling wines that have their own characteristics. Briefly, before we start, what I want to do is virtually open our first bottle, and we are going to start with champagne today. This is Veuve Clicquot's champagne. It is a brut non-vintage champagne. There are distinctions between vintage and non-vintage wines. Obviously, a vintage has a year that the wines came from. Non-vintage champagnes in particular represent the style of the house and will be very consistent from year to year. They're blended to be that way. So opening a bottle of sparkling wine is very important because here we have wine that has CO2 trapped in it, 90 pounds per square inch, and a champagne cork will fly at about 60 miles an hour if it's let to go loose. And every year we have about 1,500 people that have some kind of an accident with a sparkling wine. So we remove the foil, and what we have is the muselet here, and this is one thing in the wine world that everyone has agreed upon. Now, when opening a bottle of sparkling wine, we're never going to remove our hand from this. Normally, I would have a towel over this so that should it get loose, it would be slowed down by the towel. The wire is actually 6 turns exactly counterclockwise. Michael, you looked a little nervous when I did that. And then we loosen the muselet. And all we're going to do, one, keep the bottle at a 45-degree angle. That will equalize the pressure in the bottle. And we're going to turn the bottle as we ease the cork out. The French say, when you properly open a bottle of champagne, it sounds like the contented sigh of a woman.
Oh.
All right, and as simple as that.
That easy.
Just that easy. Now I'm going to pour a little of this Veuve Clicquot for everyone, and we'll taste and we'll talk. Tom, nice to have you here with us today. We have Tom, Lauren, and Michael joining Monica and I to taste. Tougher jobs have been had. Now, when we pour, as you can see, the bubbles are going to come up and they're going to settle down. I'm actually going to back up and give you a little more there, Tom. I don't want to short you.
So when you're pouring, you only pour a little bit at a time. You don't fill the glass, correct?
You know, it all depends on where you want to be with it. Champagne, in the case of champagne, you want it to be cold. And you want it to be painfully cold. So pouring small amounts definitely works. These are beautiful little glasses that they have here at Cafe Alegre. And as you see, the bubbles come up real quick there. So champagne is a sparkling wine that happened at the advent of the bottle, right around the 17th century. Now, the fact of the matter is we've all heard of Dom Perignon. Oh, I've got to pour myself some here. We've all heard of Dom Perignon, and everyone seems to think that he was the father of champagne, where the reality is that sparkling wine actually started much sooner than that. It was actually in 1532 that a small region in the south of France called Blanquette de Limoux, the Limoux region, actually started producing sparkling wines. And this is Saint-Hilaire, which is still producing sparkling wines, and they're considered to be the oldest sparkling wine house in the world. They precede the Champagne region by a little over 100 years. Then there was a gentleman in England by the name of Edward Merritt, who in the 1600s wrote a paper on how if you took sweet or molasses and added it into wine, it would cause a secondary fermentation and it would cause effervescence. And he found this to be pleasant. That was 6 years before Dom Perignon was assigned to the Abbey of Otterville, which is up in the Champagne region of France, and he was assigned there to actually fix a problem they were having in their cellars with bottles of wine exploding. These demon wines that had this effervescence that were causing bottles that weren't quite as good as they are today, weren't quite as strong, they would be exploding in the cellar. So he was actually brought into the cellar to try to fix this problem. Through time, he was a wise enough man to realize that this was an attribute and not a challenge, and convinced those in the region to produce the wine in a sparkling fashion. Now, today we drink a wine that's produced in a style called method champenois, and this is secondary fermentation in the bottle. First, cheers.
Salute.
Salute. Chin chin, skol, whatever country. The most celebrated wine
To Tom.
for weddings, for all great ceremonies, champagne is there. Now,
Wow.
secondary fermentation in the bottle is a very interesting practice. And this was something that was Dom Perignon actually perfected, and I'll use this bottle just as an example. So you make a still wine. When you make wine, you take grapes, you press them, sugar and yeast come into contact with each other. They cause fermentation, which gives us alcohol in the result of alcohol, and then CO2 is typically released into the air. They figured out a way to trap the CO2, so when you make a bottle of sparkling wine in the method champenois fashion, what you do is you make a still wine, then you take that wine and you put it into a bottle, you put a little bit of sugar and yeast in that bottle, and you put a plain old crown cap, a soda cap on top of that, and you let it re-ferment in the bottle. Now what's going to happen is now you've got a fermentation where you've trapped all of the CO2 and you have a sparkling wine. This was the process that Dom Perignon perfected in the 17th century. The problem is that after the wine fermented, you would have yeast cells in the bottom. Not only is it a problem, it's a blessing because those dead yeast cells are going to add to the structure and the flavor of the wine. Think of it in the terms of bread. When they talk about descriptors for champagne, they always talk about toast and biscuit and brioche and all of these wonderful toasty characteristics. That comes from the time that the wine spends with the yeast in the bottle, okay? That time is known as entourage, and a champagne will spend a minimum of 3 years and then upward, sometimes 10, 20 years, where it's laid on that yeast, and then they had to figure out a way to get the yeast cells and all of the dead yeast out of the bottle because for the first 100 years of champagne, it was a cloudy wine that had effervescence. Thus comes Madame Clicquot, the Veuve Clicquot, the widow Clicquot. She was a woman that married, and 6 years later her husband passed away, and one of his business concerns was a champagne house. She had this crazy idea that if she took the bottle of wine and she drilled holes in her kitchen table and upended it and jiggled that wine every day, she worked all of that sediment into the neck of the bottle. At that point, you had all the sediment here. She dipped it into a freezing brine solution, freezing the sediment into a plug of ice, upended the bottle, popped that cap off, the pressure from the sparkling wine, pushed the plug of ice out with the sediment in it. They topped it off with a little bit of wine, put the final muselet and cork in as we see today, and that is the technique that still today stands as method champenois. And now you have a clear wine that has effervescence to it. So this is the technique that true champagne is made with. So, take a look. Beautiful bubbles. What you want in a great glass of champagne is beautiful perlage. You want to see the bubbles streaming from the bottom to the top, and you want them to be fine bubbles. Put your nose in the glass and tell me what you smell. I got a quiet crowd here today. All right. Any toasty components there?
Toasty, for sure.
I tend to get some fruit
I was going to
characters.
say, I smell France.
There you go. Well, I smell a certain apple-y component to this. I also get some raspberry. And there's a definite toastiness to that, and you could use a million descriptors for that.
But we want to make sure that we understand that there's no raspberries in this, correct?
Correct. Wine is made strictly from grapes, and the things that we smell, the things that we taste, often come from our memory banks of things that we are accustomed to smelling and tasting. Because all we really taste is sweet, sour, bitter, salt, and umami.
Now, is
Umami
champagne made with white grapes or red?
Interesting question. Champagne is made, true champagne is made with 3 grapes. 2 red grapes and 1 white grape. Chardonnay is the grape, the white grape that gives it finesse. The 2 red grapes are Pinot Noir and a similar grape called Pinot Meunier. Now these are red grapes. You can make a white wine out of a red grape simply by pressing that grape and taking the skins away immediately. All right. All of the color components in a red wine come from the skins. So that if you press it and take it away immediately, you get a white wine. So yes, we use 2 red grapes. The red grapes, the Pinot Noir and the Pinot Meunier, add structure and add body to the wine.
So what do they do with the skins?
The skins are taken away. They're actually used as, they compost them back into the soil.
Don't they make in Italy, don't they make a grappa out of the skins?
You can make grappas. That's known as mar. What they do is they press off, when you're making red wine and you press off all of the skins, you have all of basically the skins, the seeds, and everything left over. That is then re-soaked, fermented, and then distilled, and that's grappa.
Wow.
So yes.
Do the French make a kind of grappa?
The French make something called mar. The Italians make grappa. So yes, there are distinctive brandies made throughout the world from the leftovers of wine.
Isn't that interesting? It's
Do
fascinating.
you ever see a red sparkling wine?
You do have red sparkling wines. I see the Australians make a sparkling Shiraz. The Italians do make a red sparkling wine as well. They typically use Lambrusco, I should say, in Franciacortas. And here you have sparkling wine with no color to it, but in a French wine, if you were to leave those skins in contact for a short period of time and then remove them, we get rosé.
Oh, rosé is made from a white wine with red in it? No.
Rosé is made from taking red grapes, leaving the skins in contact for a short period of time until you get that right color, and then pulling them away, and then you have that beautiful pink tinge that you get to it.
Because Mandol, I know Mandol quite well, which is
Mandol, yes, absolutely.
And Provence, they always make the best rosé wines.
And rosé season's right around the corner here
Oh,
in the
is
spring.
it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, the spring.
Rosés have become very popular again in the United States. It is something that typically we see through the spring and summer season, and in the winter people just change their drinking habits. So we see less rosés drank in the winter, but as a wine merchant, I am seeing more and more people drinking rosé year-round now.
And so then the champagne, though, is really just more for a festive occasion, or could you drink it with any meal? Could you drink it?
You know, the great thing about champagne is it's one of the most versatile wines there is when it comes to food. Because of the effervescence acts to cleanse the palate. So sparkling wine has this beautiful broad range that you can start, and it's wonderful as an aperitif before dinner. It will carry through many different courses, including meat courses, depending on the body of the wine, and then works very nicely with desserts as well. Chocolate is one of the interesting things. If you have sparkling wine with chocolate, when you're eating the chocolate, the fat in the chocolate coats your mouth. Any sparkling wine will tend to cleanse your palate and open that up, and it really brings the flavor out of the chocolate as well as lifting up the flavors within the wine.
Is there a sweet champagne?
By all means. There are different styles. The original preferred style of sparkling wine was known as D-O-U-X, which is sweet. We never see sweet sparkling wines in the United States anymore. The typical styles, the driest that you will see will be something either called Sauvage or Nature, which is absolutely no residual sugar left. They are bone dry styles. Brut is the most common style.
Which is this?
Which is this. We are drinking a Brut wine here, which is dry. There's very little residual sugar. Extra dry, though it seems rather odd, extra dry is one shade less dry than Brut. So it's still a dry wine, but tends to show a little more fruit characters and is not as dry, but certainly not sweet. Then we'll see the term demi-sec. Demi-sec has some residual sugar left in. It's a slightly sweeter style. Wonderful. If you find demi-secs, and even Veuve Clicquot makes a demi-sec, they're wonderful with desserts and such. So method champenois is the technique that is still used today. They're still hand manipulated. When they make champagne, there's a remoire that's known as a riddler. And today, instead of using Madame Clicquot's kitchen table, they actually have something called a pupitre tray, which is a rack that has holes in it, and all of the bottles are lined up. And in the cellar, a gentleman will come by, known as a remoire or riddler, and he will turn up to 30,000 bottles a day.
No, no.
This is one person. And this is still the preferred technique. There are machines called gyropalettes that can do this process, but even when they do this process, about 20% of the wines still have, sediment is very sticky, these yeast cells, so there's still a portion of the wines that have to go back in and be done by hand. So today, there's still, some of the great houses still use hand riddling all the way through.
So what was the second one that you brought today?
Okay, now we're going to move on to a Spanish cava. This is Segura Viudas. This is a Brut. This is a wine that is made in the same fashion as champagne. Now, the Champenois have exceptionally good lawyers. In 1994, they went to the European Economic Community and they said, we feel that the term method champenois is our term, and we don't want anyone else in the world using it anymore. So, as of 2005, anyone that is associated with the EEC will no longer use the term method champenois, even though they're using that technique, and they've changed the name to method traditionnel.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, they truly are amazing in the Champagne region. So, here we have a Spanish cava made in the same fashion as champagne, but with different grape varieties. Where we have champagne being Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier, we have grape varieties that we don't know as well, Macabeo, Paradilla, and, oh, that's terrible. I've lost one here. So 3 grape varieties in the sparkling wine. And again, the same result. You're going to get a rich wine. That time that it spends in the bottle, entourage, where it's laying with the yeast cells, is going to develop the style of the wine and the body of the wine.
But it looks like, looks lighter than the Veuve Clicquot.
Yep, the color is a little bit lighter than the Veuve Clicquot, and you know, if you notice, the bubbles are actually a little bigger on this one, I notice.
The bubbles are a little bit bigger.
Now, this is a modestly priced sparkling wine. Cavas can be a great value. If you're doing big parties, I like to use cavas because they have similar characteristics to champagne. They have that richness, but they represent really good values.
It's amazing. You can really, really taste the difference between the two. Yes. Isn't that amazing? But you don't think about it when you're just drinking them, but when there's one next to the other, it's side by side. You're like, oh my goodness. You can see or taste such a difference. I'm really, it's like shocking almost, because you don't normally drink something one next to the other.
Exactly. Now, how do you find it? Do you find it that you like it more or less? I mean,
well, because I lived in Spain and love my Spanish friends, I'm not going to comment, but
you prefer the champagne.
There is a difference.
There's no question. There is a difference.
What did you think?
Well, this is actually from Spain.
Right,
and
that's
not the Champagne region. Well, yeah, I could taste the difference. I thought this was a little bit less effervescent than the other one.
Okay.
But that really doesn't apply to the taste. It's just the texture of it, I would think.
Yeah, cavas typically come from the Penedès region of Spain, and the 3 grape varieties are Macabeo, Xarel·lo, and Paradilla. Okay, so we have those. I got the third grape variety
There
together.
you go.
And so again, they're
What did
made
you
in the
think?
same technique.
And what did you think, Micah? Did
Oh,
you?
no, I thought it was good. It seemed a little. Is it lighter than the other, or
You tell me.
I feel like it's
A little bit lighter?
yeah,
Okay.
maybe a little lighter, a little.
And again,
sweeter.
remember the time that it spends in contact with those yeast cells are going to make a difference in the actual body of the wine as it comes out. So where this may have spent 5 or 6 years on the entourage, on the lees, this may have only spent 2 or 3.
So the next question, because I always heard that red wines, of course, take longer, as you mentioned in our last show about the years and the oak and the. But I always thought that white wines were only a few years, and now you're saying that to make a champagne it takes 3-4 years.
No question about it. I have had
I'm really surprised.
I have had champagnes that have been resting in that state, which they call entourage, the French call, which means that it's just resting with the yeast in it. I've had wines that have spent 30 years in that fashion, and then they were disgorged, that process of removing the sediment.
And it doesn't go bad?
No, the wine actually gets very rich, very lush. Champagne is a wine that actually ages very well. Now,
What about white wines, though? Not the same.
white wines, it all depends on the white wine that's made. That's a big topic there. I have drank white wines that were 30 and 40 years old, dry white wines that were exquisite.
Wow.
Sweet dessert wines are some of the most long-lived wines in the world. You have a great dessert wine, it can live 100 years.
I think they found just recently a Roman wine. The Romans were making wines, so that's obviously a long time ago. But so how long, if I were purchasing it, can we start at a pricing? How much would the Veuve Clicquot cost
Veuve
about?
Clicquot, I think, is somewhere around $45 a bottle.
Okay,
And this is and here's a good point. This is a non-vintage Veuve Clicquot. Here I have Veuve Clicquot's vintage Grande Dame. This is known as the tête de cuvée, the head of the cuvée, the best wine. This is the Dom Perignons, the Veuve Clicquots, the Cristals of the world. This is a vintage dated wine. In Champagne, when you have a vintage, it's not every year. They declare a vintage in the best harvests. So a vintage dated wine is going to reflect the quality of that particular harvest. One thing about a non-vintage brut, in the case of this Veuve Clicquot, is that every year when you buy a bottle, 10 years from now, it should taste the same, because they're blending it to keep it very consistent.
And how much would that one that you just put back cost?
That Grande Dame is, I think, $140 a bottle, somewhere around there.
And a bottle of Cristal?
Cristal is over $200 nowadays, I think.
And do you really think if you put one of these against a Cristal, could you taste the difference?
They are all distinctively different. Cristal is very delicate. Veuve Clicquot is richer and earthier. Dom Perignon fits about in the middle. Bollinger is very full. Each house has their own style.
You can taste it.
And people have allegiances to different houses. So yes, there's distinctive difference in the tastes.
Because that's a big price difference, too.
Right.
And how much was the Spanish Cava?
The Spanish Cava, I think this runs about $12 a bottle.
Wow, that's
So Cava's
amazing.
for everyday drinking. And
That's
I know
amazing.
people don't think about sparkling wine for everyday drinking, but it can be a wine that you can drink every day.
And what was the third wine you brought for us?
Now, the third wine I brought is a Prosecco. Again, appropriate here for Cafe Allegre. We are going to drink an Italian sparkling wine. This comes from the Veneto region of Italy and a grape variety that's called Glera, also known as the Prosecco grape. Now, Prosecco is made in a different style. Prosecco is made and produced in a technique called Charmat. And the method that they use to do this is that they make a still wine, and then the secondary fermentation is actually done in a very large tank under pressure, so that once the secondary fermentation is done, it goes from being in that tank to going to the bottle. So the big difference that you're going to get with a Prosecco is that, one, it's more cost effective for the producer to be able to produce Proseccos, so they represent a very good value. The other thing that's a little bit different about Proseccos is that a Prosecco, being made in the Charmat method, spends less time in contact with those toasty dead yeast cells. So they tend to be a little lighter. And this is Mianetto Prosecco. It's an exceptional Prosecco. Mianetto has always been a very sustainable production. Most of their grapes are certified organic, though this larger production of theirs is not. All of their grapes are sustainable. as many wineries are, but Mianetta really does a great job with their
And
wines.
they've used the same colors as the Veuve Clicquot.
You know, it is interesting that people do try to pick
Right.
up on those
I'm
things in
sure
marketing.
if they're not looking carefully, you're going to pick up.
Right.
How much is this Italian one cost?
Let's see, Mianetto I think is around the $14 range. But smell this. Can you see the difference right there in the nose?
Absolutely. Immediately.
Bright citrus
Immediately.
characters, and it smells lighter. You don't smell that toastiness. And you know what?
Less bubbles.
Well, now, and here's a couple.
Yours,
Now,
isn't that interesting? Yours are more.
ladies, here's a couple of things that happen. One, lipstick and cosmetics will kill bubbles. When you're washing sparkling wine glasses, you want to make sure you get all of the soap out of a particular glass because it will kill the bubbles.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things that will affect the actual bubbles. I think it's Riedel actually does a champagne glass where they etch the inside ever so slightly, which helps the bubbles have this vehicle to really stream. So they figured out science has figured out all kinds of crazy ways to make these things better. So here we are, a lighter style, like I said, a little more citrus on the nose. We didn't know Prosecco from any other Italian sparkling wine until very recent history, about 20 years ago, when someone brought the recipe for the Bellini from Harry's in Venice to the United States. And this was the wine that was used as the base of the Bellini, which is peach nectar and sparkling wine. And this is what I like about Proseccos and I like about Cavas, that it's a wine that we can enjoy every day, and it's also a wine that you can mix and not feel guilty about as you would with trying to mix a $45 bottle of Veuve Clicquot.
Lauren, what did you think of this last one, the differences?
Oh, totally different. Definitely citrusy, much different than the Cava and the Champagne. I think I prefer, for me, Champagne #1, and then I would say probably Cava the last. This is nice. This is nice and citrusy.
It's very bright.
affordable.
Yeah.
This one's much
Exactly.
more sweet.
I like the flavor.
There is a touch more residual sugar in this. There's
Right.
no question about it.
And you, Tom, which one did you like best?
I like the Prosecco,
The,
the best.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And you like the
Prosecco.
Prosecco?
Yeah, I do like it.
There's a whole range of flavors that you will get out of sparkling wines. And again, what will happen is as you taste more sparkling wines, you end up getting an allegiance to a particular house style.
Now for food, would let's say I'm having a dinner party, I want to, obviously a Veuve Clicquot would be a little more expensive.
Right.
But it would certainly, I would be able to pick any of these, and there's probably many other houses that would work in a $10, $15.
No question about it. Hundreds
And you can
hundreds.
have them with anything, with almost any food,
Again, they are-
cheese,
yeah.
whatever, you can use any of these wines.
They are very versatile. And I mean, think about what you have in front of you right here. This would be as great as an aperitif, where the weight of this wine is more appropriate for an entree and heavier, richer food.
Which one is that?
The Veuve Clicquot, I'm sorry.
The
Yes,
Veuve Clicquot.
So there you have it. These are sparkling wines. And again, Champagne is only a wine that is produced in the Champagne region of France. The soil is very distinctive. It's very chalky, and that's a part of where you get that character. And as well, how they handle it in the cellar, the time that it spends, entourage on the lees of the dead yeast cells are all going to be a part of the makeup of sparkling wine. The other thing that we need to know is that when it comes down to champagne and sparkling wines, the cost, which is a little higher than most regular wines, really is associated with the time that it takes to produce one, the fact that the glass has to be heavier to hold the bottle, and all of the other elements that go into it make it such a wonderful and such a great wine that it is the wine that we tend to celebrate with.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. It's
My
been
pleasure.
wonderful. It's Joe Dolce, who has been an amazing sommelier today that we've learned so much from you.
Thank you.
And Michael Dugo, Lauren Christine, and Tom, thank you so much for being here. And Chef Silvio and Cafe Allegre, we've had the most fabulous show. Thank you again, and hope to see you all very, very soon to Easy and Elegant. Woo! Woo! Woo!
Salud. Cheers.
Salud.